a little girl vanished from her bed in the dead of night. No broken windows, no open doors, no sound. One moment she was there, curled beneath her pink blanket. The next, she was gone. Her toys untouched, her room exactly as it was. The entire house silent, except for the slow ticking of the hallway clock. It was as if the darkness itself had reached in and taken her. The family searched, the police searched, but there were no footprints, no signs of struggle. Just an empty bed, and a question that would haunt them for years. How can someone disappear without a trace right from under a roof that was supposed to keep her safe? It was the summer of 1991. The Jennings family lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside of Portland. White picket fences, trimmed lawns, and the kind of stillness that made every night feel safe. Emily Jennings was 7 years old, full of life and questions, with curly chestnut hair and a laugh that echoed through the hallways. She shared a room with her baby sister Sophie, though Emily always insisted on staying up a little longer to talk to her stuffed animals lined neatly along the windowsill. Her parents, Mark and Linda, were ordinary people. Mark was a high school teacher, Linda worked part-time at a florist. They weren't rich, but they were happy, grateful for every meal together, every family movie night, every soft bedtime story whispered under the dim glow of a pink nightlight. That night, August 12th, was no different. Emily brushed her teeth, kissed her mother goodnight, and curled into bed holding her favorite toy, a small, yellow tape recorder with little stickers Emily had stuck all over it. She liked to record stories for Sophie, make-believe adventures about castles and stars and invisible friends. No one imagined that what Emily would record that night would become the most important clue the family ever found. At 7:32 a.m. the next morning, everything shattered. Linda walked into the bedroom to wake the girls, only to find Sophie sleeping soundly, and Emily's bed empty. The blanket was still creased as though someone had gently pulled it back. Her recorder sat beside her pillow. Nothing in the room looked disturbed, no mess, no signs of a struggle, just absence. A kind of silence that made Linda's stomach twist into something cold and unreal. She screamed. Mark came running. Within the hour, neighbors had gathered. Police combed the house. Doors were checked, windows examined, locks tested. But everything was intact. No broken glass, no footprints in the flower beds outside. No one had seen anything. And no one had heard a thing. It was as if Emily had simply dissolved into the night. The media swarmed in. "Girl vanishes from locked house," the headlines read. Reporters stood outside their lawn, cameras flashed, flyers went up on every telephone pole for miles, tips poured in then dried out. Psychics offered theories, detectives worked through the nights, but nothing made sense. Linda stopped sleeping, she stopped smiling. Mark grew quiet, worn. Sophie began waking up crying, clutching Emily's pillow. And in the center of it all was a small, yellow recorder. For years, no one touched it. It sat on a shelf, gathering dust, until 9 years later, when Linda, cleaning the attic, pressed play, and finally heard what had been left behind. Linda searched everywhere, the hallway, the closets, the basement, again and again. Doors were locked, windows sealed, the baby monitor silent, nothing broken, nothing moved, just the eerie stillness of a house that should have been safe. She opened drawers, peeked behind curtains, even checked inside the washing machine, whispering Emily's name like a prayer. But there was no trace of her daughter, not a single thread of clothing out of place, not a single shoe missing. It was as if Emily had been erased. The police arrived quickly, but their faces shifted from concern to quiet confusion. No sign of forced entry, they said. No sign of a struggle. One of them suggested maybe Emily had wandered out in the middle of the night. But how? The doors were latched from the inside. The windows too high for a child to climb. Could a 7-year-old unlock the back door, slip past her parents, and vanish without a sound? And if she did, where did she go? Mark scoured the backyard, shouting her name, climbing fences, checking every bush, every tree. He ran down the street barefoot, knocking on neighbors' doors, eyes wide with panic. No one had seen anything. No one had heard a thing, not even a dog barking, not even the creak of a floorboard. Is it possible to disappear into thin air? The police brought in search dogs. Helicopters hovered above the trees. Volunteers walked shoulder to shoulder through the nearby woods, holding flashlights even during daylight. Every closet in every house nearby was opened. Every creek, every shed, every storm drain was checked. But there was nothing. Days passed, then weeks. In her mind, she heard Emily's laughter again. That light, bubbly giggle that came every time she skipped over her own shoelaces. She remembered brushing her daughter's hair after bath time, the smell of strawberry shampoo, the soft feel of Emily's tiny fingers clutching her arm during bedtime prayers. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. Linda had whispered it with her every single night. Emily would always add something extra at the end. And bless Mama and Sophie and Daddy and my stuffed hippo too. That silly hippo still sat on the top shelf, untouched. Linda couldn't bear to move it. Some nights, when she couldn't sleep, she'd come in and sit in the rocker, as if waiting for Emily to sneak in and wrap her arms around her from behind like she used to. But she never did. And now all she had left was this toy. This old plastic recorder that held more truth than any investigator, any theory, any newspaper article ever had. Linda pressed it to her chest and let the tears come. Why hadn't she played it sooner? Why did no one think to listen, to really listen? The guilt weighed like bricks in her lungs. She had scrubbed this house, posted flyers, screamed Emily's name through forests and empty streets. But the one thing her daughter had left behind, the one message she'd recorded in fear, in desperation, had sat in a box for nearly a decade. She kept replaying those words in her head. "Help me! In the closet, please!" A whisper, a cry, a message for her mother. And she had missed it. Mark tried to stay strong. Sophie, now 16, was a shadow of her sister, quiet, withdrawn, always glancing at the empty doorway like she, too, hoped Emily might return. But it was Linda who carried the weight. The mother's ache that never faded. They said maybe Emily was still out there. Maybe alive. Maybe waiting. But Linda knew better. A mother knows when the lullabies have truly ended. She looked around the room once more, whispering softly, "I'm so sorry, baby. I should have heard you." And with trembling fingers, she pressed play, just to hear her daughter's voice one more time. To this day, no one knows exactly what happened to Emily Jennings after that night in 1991. The recording proved what Linda had always feared but never dared to speak aloud. Emily hadn't wandered away. She hadn't been lost. She had been taken. And someone had been in her room, speaking to her in the darkness, whispering threats behind her lullabies. The discovery inside the attic triggered a series of revelations, some confirmed, others too terrifying to fully believe. The hidden closet space, the fabric scrap, the voice on the tape. A man arrested, a name connected, but no trial has begun, no confession has been made, and most painfully, no body has ever been found. Linda visits Emily's room each night now, not out of habit, but because it's the only place that still feels connected to her daughter's voice. Sometimes she replays the tape. Not because she wants to, but because she has to. It's the last sound of her child that the world has. Mark doesn't talk much about that night anymore. He spends more time in the garage, alone. Sophie avoids the room altogether, as if crossing the threshold would make the memory too real. Still, the case is not closed. Authorities continue to comb through other evidence that was originally dismissed. The FBI has reopened several missing child files from the early 90s that bear chilling similarities. Children disappearing from locked homes, no sign of struggle, always in the quiet hours before dawn. A pattern no one had noticed before. And there are whispers that the voice on the recording may not belong to the neighbor they arrested. Some experts say the voice seems too calm, too rehearsed. Others believe it's not just one case, that there may have been more recordings out there. One technician swears that during a deeper scan of the audio, he heard another sound layered beneath Emily's whisper. A faint tune, like a music box winding down, but no one else has confirmed it. Is it possible someone else was in the room that night? Is it possible someone helped cover it up? Linda doesn't know what to believe anymore. She only knows what she hears every time she presses play. Help me, in the closet, please. A plea buried in time, in silence, in a plastic toy no one thought mattered. The case file remains open, and somewhere out there, maybe in another attic, another forgotten box, more evidence might be waiting. Another voice, another child, another story. And if that day comes, will someone finally listen in time? Or will the silence win again? The closet. Her words were barely audible. Please. Silence. A long, chilling silence. Then the recorder made a soft click like the tape ending and stopped. The room remained still. No one breathed for several seconds. Linda's hands were pressed to her mouth. Mark stared at the wall. Sophie had tears streaming down her cheeks. The detective spoke first, his voice careful, low. We're going to need to enhance that, all of it. There may be more. Linda didn't respond. Her mind was trapped in that whisper. Help me. In the closet. She remembered Emily's closet. She remembered how the door never quite closed, how they'd looked inside it 100 times after the disappearance. But had anyone listened? Really listened to the toy that sat right beside the pillow? What else had they missed? Mark stood abruptly and left the room. He couldn't hear it again. But Linda rewound the tape, pressing play once more, needing to be sure. Needing to confirm the horror hadn't just been in her head. Emily's voice. Help me! The man. Be quiet! It played over and over in her mind, a dark melody she couldn't escape. Somewhere in the blur of pain and time, Linda realized something terrible. Emily had left a message, a cry, a clue, and no one had heard it until now. She clutched the recorder to her chest like a lifeline, whispering to herself, I'm sorry, baby. I didn't know you were calling for me. The toy was no longer just a memory, it was evidence. And now, the hunt for truth had truly begun. The very next morning, the recorder was handed over to the police department's audio forensics team. Within hours, the case, long considered cold, was officially reopened. 9 years after Emily Jennings vanished from her bed without a sound, there was finally something concrete, something real. The whispering voice, the plea for help, the mention of the closet. It wasn't imagination, it was evidence. And this time, no one was going to ignore it. Detectives who had once worked the case returned to dusty files and faded photographs. Old witness statements were pulled. Maps from 1991 reappeared on office walls. Markings, timelines, theories, everything was re-examined with fresh urgency. The closet Emily mentioned in the recording. It was checked again, this time with advanced UV lighting and forensic scans. The results came back. Strange. Faint scuff marks were found on the back panel. Scratches too deliberate, too sharp to be accidental. And behind that thin panel, a hollow space, small, cramped, hidden for decades. Inside, a scrap of fabric, faded pink with cartoon stars, Emily's pajama print, confirmed by photos from the night she vanished. The case shifted overnight. One officer remembered something. A neighbor 3 doors down who had given a confusing statement years ago, a man named Greg Talbot, lived alone, had reported seeing shadows near the Jennings house that night, but offered no details. He was never considered a serious lead. He'd moved out 2 months later. Now he was living 2 states over. Detectives tracked him down, quiet, private, no criminal record, but something felt off. His answers were careful, too careful. When asked about Emily, his hands trembled slightly. He claimed not to remember much, claimed he'd been asleep. But one detail slipped. I never touched the girl. I only saw her once. It wasn't what he said, but how he said it. Saw her once. He hadn't been told anything yet. No one had mentioned the tape. No one had said Emily had been seen by anyone. Why would he say that? Meanwhile, forensics enhanced the recorder audio further. Hidden beneath Emily's voice, almost masked completely, was the sound of footsteps. Slow, heavy. Then a door creaking. Then what sounded like breathing, raspy, close to the mic. They played it for Linda, her face drained. "That's not just someone in the room," she whispered. "That's someone watching her." The FBI was brought in. Greg Talbot's home was searched. Behind his garage wall, sealed off with drywall, investigators found a box of old tapes, children's voices, static, laughter. Emily's name wasn't on any of them. But one was dated August 12th, 1991. The contents haven't been released to the public, but detectives say what they heard confirmed their worst fears and made one thing painfully clear. Emily had not simply vanished, she had been hunted. And finally, someone had made a mistake. Linda sat alone in Emily's room, 9 years older, 9 years emptier. The sunlight streaming through the dusty window didn't warm the space. It only revealed how long time had stood still. The wallpaper was still pastel pink, dotted with tiny clouds. The little bookshelf still held the same fairy tales, their pages slightly curled. On the corner of the bed, the yellow recorder rested like a wound that never closed. She picked it up slowly, holding it the way one might hold a fragile memory, both sacred and painful. She closed her eyes. Emily's face was on every news channel, every newspaper, but leads went nowhere. Tips led to dead ends. One woman claimed she saw Emily at a gas station 4 towns over, but security footage showed nothing. Another caller swore she saw the child in a mall bathroom, but again, no proof. The mystery only deepened. What kind of person could do this? Why Emily? Why this night? Linda stayed up every night, replaying the last moments. Emily brushing her teeth, Emily giggling about her story for Sophie. Emily kissing her cheek and whispering, "Good night, Mama." Did she miss something? A sound? A shadow? A presence in the room? Could someone have been watching their house? Waiting? And then there was the tape recorder. It sat quietly in the evidence box, sealed away. Everyone assumed it held nothing, just a child's ramblings, bedtime songs, maybe an imaginary tale or two. But deep down, Linda always felt there was something left behind, something no one had noticed, something waiting to be heard. She would not press play for 9 more years, but when she did, it would change everything. 9 years passed, seasons changed, trees in the front yard grew taller, the paint on Emily's bedroom door chipped and faded, but the house remained the same, a frozen monument to a day that never made sense. The Jennings family never moved. Linda couldn't leave. What if Emily came back one day and no one was home? Sophie grew older, quieter. Mark grew tired, hollow-eyed. And Linda, she never stopped wondering, even after the cameras stopped showing up, even after the search teams packed up, even after the world moved on. It was a cold morning in early October when Linda finally entered the attic. Dust coated everything. Old boxes, forgotten toys, baby clothes folded into silence. She wasn't looking for anything in particular, just trying to feel close to Emily again, even if it meant opening wounds. She opened a box labeled Emily, 1991, and there it was. The yellow tape recorder. Stickers still peeling at the corners. A faint scratch along the side. It hadn't been touched since the night Emily disappeared. Linda held it gently, afraid it might crumble in her hands. For a long moment, she just stared at it. Then she pressed play. There was a crackle, a pop of static. Then Emily's voice, light and playful, filled the attic. "This is Emily and Sophie's bedtime story. Tonight we're going to the stars." Her voice trailed off in giggles. Linda smiled, her eyes flooding with tears. But then, something else. Another voice, faint, garbled, deeper. Linda froze. It wasn't Emily, and it wasn't anyone she recognized. She rewound the tape, pressed play again. The first few seconds played as before. Emily's cheerful voice, but then, just beneath it, a low whisper. Not part of the story, not part of the game. "Don't move. Be quiet." Linda's heart slammed in her chest. She dropped the recorder, her breath gone. She scrambled to pick it up, hit rewind again, this time pressing her ear close. There it was, clearer now, a man's voice, calm, cold, deliberate. "Don't move. Be quiet. You'll see your mum soon." Linda staggered backward, her fingers trembling. The air around her felt heavier, colder. That voice had been inside her home, in Emily's room, on the night she disappeared. Why hadn't anyone checked the recording before? Why hadn't she? She ran down the stairs, clutching the recorder like it was the only living piece of her daughter left. Mark listened. Sophie listened. And then the police. The case was reopened that same week. What they would uncover next would shake everything the Jennings family believed and bring them closer to answers they had stopped hoping for. Because Emily hadn't just disappeared, she had been taken. And she had left behind a voice no one was ever supposed to hear. The yellow recorder sat in the center of the living room table, surrounded by silence. No one spoke. Not Mark, not Sophie, and not Linda, who held her breath as her thumb hovered over the play button once more. The detective sat across from her, notebook ready, though he already looked unsettled. No one in the room was ready for what they were about to hear again, but they needed to. Linda pressed play. The familiar crackle returned first, harmless, nostalgic even. Then came Emily's voice, software sweet, innocent. "Hi, it's me, Emily, and this is our bedtime story." A pause. "I'm in the spaceship. Sophie's the captain." Another pause, then static, then a change in tone. Emily's voice returned, but quieter, no longer playful. "Someone's in the room," she whispered. Everyone leaned in. "Mommy, is that you?" More static, then came the whisper, not Emily's. A man's voice, faint, just beneath the noise. "Don't move. Be quiet." Click. A slight mechanical sound, maybe the toy shifting or a button being bumped. Then Emily again. But now her voice trembled. "Help me!" A gasp escaped from Sophie. "Help me! In!"